Hey guys, Carl Trace Media Co here, and today we're going over the Sony 7200 f2.8 G Master lens. Before we get into the lens, a few notes. First, thanks for the growth of this channel so far. Second, I made a video about the cheaper version of this lens, the f4 version, about 4 years ago now. It's my most viewed video on this channel, which is cool and kind of sucks because it's old and pretty cringy, but it got the point across on how great of a focal length the 7200 lens is and the importance of it. I have regretted selling the f4 version for a long time, and about 3 months ago I decided that I really needed this focal length again. And in my adult life, it's the first time I had the funds to be able to afford a lens like this. So I made the purchase, and I haven't regretted it. It's a great lens, and let's dive into the positives and negatives of this lens, starting off with the positives. Okay, first on the pros list, the focal range. This one really goes for either lens, the 2.8 version or the f4 version. The 70 to 200 focal range is great for weddings, documentaries, event work, product photography, videography, or just carrying around. The 2.8 version is a little bit heavier, but we'll get into that a little bit here. If I'm doing an interview, I'll usually set this up on my B camera off to the side, somewhere between the 70 and 100 range, just to get some more separation and another view of that interview. So that way, if I need to cut it to something else, I'll have this off to the side and it'll do a great job of that. And number two, the fact that it's f2.8. It's only a couple stops difference than the f4 version, I get that. But sometimes a couple stops is all you need to get that shot. The difference between a few clicks in your ISO or shutter speed may change the way something looks or add unwanted noise to your shot. Plus that separation in bokeh looks pretty good also. Number three, the OSS, optical steady shot. This one goes for both the f2.8 version and the f4 version, and they both do a great job. Being able to shoot at 200 millimeters at f2.8 handheld is pretty crazy. Then you also have mode 1 and mode 2. This also goes for both the f4 and f2.8 version. Mode 1 being for handheld, mode 2 being for a tripod for tilting and panning. Number four, the sharpness. This lens is sharp, and you can definitely tell a difference from the f4 version. Not a huge difference, and maybe it's just because I spent a ton of money on this specific lens, but I know there's a difference between the two of them as far as sharpness goes. The f4 version is great. It's a sharp lens, it does an awesome job, but I do think that the f2.8 version is just a little bit sharper. Number five, the focus. This lens focuses better than the f4 version, and it's parfocal, which makes it nice. So when you're zooming in and out, the focus distance maintains the same. It does have the tendency to back focus sometimes, which is a bummer, but as long as you can switch it over to manual focus, or if you can get some face tracking on there. I haven't had that much of a problem with the A7S III as I have with the A7R4, so take that with a grain of salt. The pros list is pretty short really, it's not much different than the f4 version, and if it wasn't needing it in lower light situations, I probably would still stay with the f4 version or have spent $1,100 less and just stayed with the f4. At the end of the day, they're both amazing lenses, and either of them will do a great job in a pinch. Alright, now on to the cons of this lens. Number one, the weight. This lens is a metric ton. It weighs in at 3.1 pounds or 1,400 grams. And you feel every bit of that when you're carrying this thing around. With a battery grip or a built-out rig, it does balance really well and it doesn't feel as bad. But when you're just carrying this thing around with the standard Sony body, it's heavy and it is unbalanced and it does wear on the hand, and if you're wearing a strap or something, it's just always heavy. The f4 version is a lot lighter, and I definitely think that 1 point goes to, I'm not doing a point system, but if I was, 1 point goes to the f4 version for being lighter, and still a great lens for how light it is, really. And if you're gonna travel, highly recommend the f4 version because getting this thing on a plane with all of your other gear or equipment, it's heavy. So you might have to sacrifice something just to fit this versus the f4 version. Number two, the tripod collar. This guy is not removable, and as it's not that big of a deal, it does add weight, and you can only remove just this little guy right here versus the whole tripod collar on the f4 version, which does take a little bit of weight away from it. It would just be nice to be able to remove this completely if you wanted to. And number three, the price. I mean, $2,500 for this lens. That's steep. Is it worth it? I think so. I spent the money on it, so I really hope it's worth it, and I've been able to get my money's worth out of it thus far. I've used it on a lot of jobs, and it's paid for itself. When I owned the f4 version, I always wanted the 2.8 version, and maybe that's just wantfulness because I just knew there was a better lens out there, and I could maybe utilize that in different ways I couldn't utilize my f4 version. I do know at the end of the day they can both produce amazing quality. So in my eyes, it kind of saves some money for not having to purchase 3 separate lenses. Now they're not all f1.4s or f1.8s, but you get what I'm saying. But the question still stands, in every video I've watched in the past waffles between, do you pick the f4 version or the f2.8 version? And at the end of the day, that comes down to your budget. Do you need the f2.8 version? Absolutely not. The f4 version will do everything you need it to do. But if you do go with the f2.8 version, you won't regret it. You might be a little broke for a little while, but you won't regret the purchase. That's all I have on this guy. So hopefully you guys got something from this, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Follow. Maybe watch one of my other videos right here or here. Maybe subscribe right here. Let's see if my hand movements are proper for what I'm doing right now. All right. Thanks, guys. See you in the next one.